McClary in Kittery Point, Maine. But what is this place? There's been a fort here since the late 17th century. Then in 1808, it was named after Andrew McClary. From the Rev War to the War of 1812, Spanish-American War, Civil War, and World War I. But who is this McClary and why was there a fort named after him? You're going to find out. From Kittery, Epsom, Portsmouth, and finally Boston, this was so awesome. You're not going to want to miss it. Let's go. Hey, it's that history chick. I'm going to talk to you guys about the life of the amazing Major Andrew McClary. This is Epsom, New Hampshire. Now, this land once held the family's farm and tavern, everything his father had built up. They came from Northern Ireland, first stopped in Londonderry, New Hampshire, and then settled upon Epsom. And upon Andrew McClary's father's death, he inherited all the land you see here. It's now town hall, a library, old meeting house, and all that's left of the McClarys really is this historic placard left by the state of New Hampshire to let people know that this was, in fact, theirs at one point. McClary's original tavern was a very important community meeting place with activity all the time and people stopping by often. All right, so Andrew McClary, born in Ulster, Northern Ireland. Okay, rewind. Born in Ulster, which is now known as Northern Ireland. So Ulster was created in 1609 by the English as a place to encourage English people to go. Eventually it became much more of a Scottish plantation, but the McClarys were Irish from that section of Ireland, then to become Ulster. Now Northern Ireland is complicated, it's political, it's a mess. It still kind of remains so today. There's a lot that could be said about it. Not going to get too much in the weeds with that one because there's a lot of strong opinions. I have a heart for Northern Ireland, being very Scottish American. I feel forever indebted to her for being a land that my people could go to. But yeah, like I said, it's very complicated. It was an English design. It split up Ireland, and I believe that all people have the right to be free if they want to be free. So if they want to, they should be. It's divided, that's the problem. As we know, as the things went on, even up until the 90s, that's a whole thing. But nevertheless, his family was from that portion of Ireland. They're of Irish descent and came to New Hampshire, had a big farm, and he was renowned in this area. He was a man about the community. He became a scout to help out with the Indian Wars. That was a huge problem here. So there was a local family that was actually kidnapped, and some of them were murdered by a local part of the native population. And he actually went out to try to find them and help with the community, assist with what was going on there, because there was lots of not only violence but threats of violence, and he helped with that. There was a lot of attacks that went on and everything. He also was a local boxing and wrestling champion. Keep in mind, so I want to set this up for you. The man was 6'2". He had striking blue eyes and was known to be very, very, very handsome. So he was quite the catch, ladies, quite the catch. Very cute Irishman, as many of them are. And but he was a good man. He just wanted the best for this new community that he was building here with some other people, and he was looking out for everybody. He did a lot of good. He ends up joining on the New Hampshire line. So in terms of the Revolutionary War, when you join the New Hampshire line, so there was a Massachusetts line, there would have been a Virginia line, all these lines together make up what would become the Continental Army. And he was a pillar here. So when fighting was brewing and people were going against the taxes, he knew about this, he wanted to help. I think too that coming from Northern Ireland, Ulster, there was a real sense of, oh, we're not going down that line again as far as the English oppression. They came here, they built up this new community, and they were going to, by God, they were going to protect it. So that's why we have so many Scottish and Irish and what people call Scots-Irish, which is really Ulster Scots. Again, Andrew McClary was an Irishman from Ulster, just to clarify. But so many of those groups came and were so successful and so helpful throughout our history because they had come out of that, and they just really were like, no, we're not doing this again. We're not playing around. These were hardworking people, oftentimes farmers, business owners, doctors, lawyers, all walks of life that would have really built up these communities. And they came here with their families, and they were going to protect it, and they were going to make it better. So as we go along here, you're going to see just what an amazing man he was, and his contribution far stretching. In terms of the early war, he had a huge impact as a hero, and I want everybody to know who he is and his life not to be a mystery anymore. Unfortunately, this is really all that's left that says his name, or a testament to like what he left behind. I can show you where his impact was really formed and reached to, and where his impact came to fruition and what he did. So let's go. Hi. Okay, so what we basically just did is traveled all of Route 4 from Epsom, New Hampshire to Newington and approaching Portsmouth beyond there. So Major McClary, that spot we were at before with nothing left but the historical placard was where his house was. Going back a little bit in the timeline, so he came here from Ireland at the age of 16 and joined up with the infamous Rogers Rangers, led by Robert Rogers, also out of New Hampshire. I mean, it was a group of amazing guys. John Stark of Live Free or Die, Death is Not the Worst of All Evils, and hero later of the Battle of Bennington was part of the group as well. And Major McClary, he was on the bandwagon. He was in the right direction. That group early on, they were part of the French and Indian War, the local Indian Wars, general protection of these villages. Like Epsom would have been really small rural farmland at the time. But rumblings started happening, and he was an early adapter of the patriot cause. He definitely wanted to secure freedoms for everyone here and for everything that he had worked for coming from Ireland. So this strapping young man hears that there's a situation brewing, so he's not going to have any of that. He's going to take action, and he's going to be part of this amazing story that's about to take place. Let's go over to Newcastle Island in Portsmouth. Guys, so I'm going to fill you in on this, and it might change your ideas about the opening of the Revolutionary War forever. All right, this is revolutionary information I'm about to give you. Pearls of wisdom, you might say. So, December 13th, 1774. Yes, that's right. That is months before April 1975, and the shots heard around the world at Lexington and Concord. Months before. Paul Revere comes here first. He gets on his horse, he winds up here on December 13th, and he's telling the townspeople back in Portsmouth, hey, we are going to raid the fort. We are going to raid Fort William and Mary. We want the gunpowder. We hear that the British are going to use this. There's going to be an attack. Things are going to go down. They're worried about Bunker Hill. So, Paul Revere comes on the 13th. On the 14th, John Langdon and Andrew McClary, among other people, start gathering men as they go. And they're getting men from Portsmouth, from town center, and the crowd is building, and it's building, and it's building as they come, and they're going through the center of right now what would be like Congress Street and Market Square, and they're gathering men as they go for the patriot cause, and the crowd swells to 400, and it turns into a parade. There's fife and drum, and they are literally sounding the alarm, the powder alarm, because they've got this Fort William and Mary, now Fort Constitution, on their minds, and they're thinking about the gunpowder in there. So the crowd swells. They've got 400 men. They've got high spirits. These are patriotic people with fervor in their bones, and they're on it. And Andrew McClary was a huge part of this. He knew that this was going to go down, and he was part of the intelligence gathering. All of his life in the past with Rogers Rangers and intelligence and defending and helping the innocent and his love of liberty, it's starting to really kick into high gear here. So they come with this 400 men, they wind up here, and they are instantly met with British guards and officers. They're like, what's going on? Well, it's a miracle. We actually were able to not only infiltrate, get in here, get the gunpowder we needed, but we took down, there was a ginormous British flag flying. And in true badass style, we took that sucker down, burned it up, tore it up, disposed of it, took the fort. And then the next day, John Sullivan, another amazing man, key figure of the Revolutionary War, came and got more gunpowder with his men. And this kind of built and built. And that gunpowder was hugely important because that gunpowder would end up being used on June 17th of the following year at the Battle of Bunker Hill. Now, the adventure continues because this builds. This is like his war resume now building. So he helps them here, he gets the gunpowder, he ends up going to Lexington and Concord April 19th. So we've got, remember, here's the timeline. So we have December 13th, Paul Revere gets here. The 14th, all the men come, we capture the fort, we take down the flag, right? December 15th, there's follow-up, everything's good. Now we're going to April 19th, Lexington and Concord. So you tell me, what was really the opening of the Rev War? Was it Lexington and Concord in 1775, a whole other year in April? Or was it here in December of 74? I mean, shots were fired. Yes, nobody was killed. Some would call it a skirmish. Some would say it was just the powder alarm. But shots were fired and we captured it and we got gunpowder. So, you know, you decide, but I think it's pretty cool. So we've got December, we've got April, and then June, Bunker Hill, a devastating result. Things would not go well. He was victorious in his way, but it did ultimately end up taking his life. So unfortunately, for the last few years, because you're probably wondering, why aren't we going in the fort, history chick? Well, it's been closed. This is like an older portion of the greater fort that you would see goes out onto the water. I'll take you down to the water in a minute actually, but it's been closed up for the last couple years. Well, ever since COVID actually, so, which getting kind of sick of that excuse, but it is closed and it is an active U.S. Coast Guard base, which we love our Coast Guard guys. But really hoping that the National Park Service will come back in here again and, you know, make it accessible for everyone, because this is a gem of history. And, you know, I have some strong feelings about the start of the war and, you know, what happening here. And so many people just don't know. It didn't have a poem about it. Wadsworth didn't come out here and, you know, say that Paul Revere rode here, and there's no song, there's no, you know, big museum. You don't put Fort William and Mary on t-shirts. I hope that changes actually. But yeah, I mean, all I can do is tell people, right? So now you guys know, that's something. So you can imagine, because a lot of these houses would have actually been here when our guys came through on December 14th. I mean, no paved roads or vehicles obviously, but some of these houses would have been here, which is pretty amazing. Like here, look at this one, 1676. So this was definitely here. Nice plaque here telling you what's what. Now just open the dang fort for us, please. We want to see it. We want to go in. Seriously, I hope that they get their stuff together. You have to think too that when Major McClary came here, this must have reminded him of the Irish Sea. You can almost see it, right? You just have to keep going. Well, here we are. I guess this is the best view in the house as far as Fort Constitution goes, because even though we're at Fort McClary, it's right over there. All right, now fire up those DeLoreans. I want to go back in time just a few hours to the center of town in Portsmouth and show you where the march through town would have happened as the men were gathered. Okay guys, so imagine, it's December 13th. Paul Revere is riding right down here through town, which is now Congress Street. This would have, of course, been a dirt road, but some of the buildings further down were here. And he gets here, of course, it's December 13th, so there's snow on the ground, it's cold, you have to imagine, it's New England wintertime. Now it's December 14th, and John Langdon's just arrived after being at the First Continental Congress for months in Philadelphia. And he gets here and he's so successful. He's got a group of patriot forces growing to 400 strong. They got one thing on their mind, the gunpowder being held at Fort William and Mary, making sure that it's ours. Mission was successful. We got the gunpowder from Fort William and Mary. Now the next day it was on to gunpowder being held in nearby Exeter, New Hampshire. The boys went and got that gunpowder, which would be later used at Bunker Hill. And we'll take you there now. As men are arriving from New Hampshire, they're gathered down here in the lower parts of Boston, and they see a lot of activity going on, and they're trying to get together and figure out, they're going to fortify. They're going to come here the night of June 16th, and in the middle of the night they're going to build earthworks and readouts, and they're going to start prepping for the next day. Now they got all this intelligent information, and they knew that things were coming to a head. A lot of that in part was thanks to Dr. Joseph Warren, who I could spend hours talking about him. We're going to complete the story of our hero of the day. That is Mr. Major Andrew McClary. But I can't not talk about Joseph Warren. He's gonna come up as well as many others, just because this was a huge thing. There was a lot going on here and we had a lot of people. But they came here, they started fortifying, they're making a plan. They're walking. We're at the bottom of Breeds/Bunker Hill. We're going to make our way to the top. And as Andrew McClary was making his way to the top, he spotted some Massachusetts militiamen slacking off. And here's what happened.
What you doing?
Nothing, just hanging out.
If your Massachusetts boys don't want the road, let the New Hampshire guys take it.
But it might have been more like, hey, what are you Massachusetts guys doing? Well, if you don't want the road, New Hampshire will take it. Probably more like that. Well, maybe it was more like, want it? New Hampshire will take it, gladly. Get off your arses and do something. So this would have been a hotbed of activity on that night, and people would have been digging trenches, dug in, fortification, earthworks, readouts, all that stuff. And you know, the reason that the British came here and decided that they were going to use this area of all places. Now originally they were going to go to Dorchester Heights as well, but they decided to just focus on Bunker/Breed Hill because it was the high ground, and it was all about taking the high ground, something we know from Star Wars, right guys? So it's all about the high ground. But they came, and we came first, and it turns out to be quite the bloodbath. So the time period from April 19th, 1775 to June 17th, 1775 is part of the greater time period known as the Siege of Boston. So the Siege of Boston, the British have come, all the generals are here. We've got Burgoyne, we've got Howe, we've got, who am I forgetting? Burgoyne,
Clinton
Howe.
and Gage, of course, it's Clinton and Gage.
And they're all here. And thanks to the intelligence of Dr. Joseph Warren, we know what's going to happen. We've got a huge spy network going on. He's embedded in it. That's how we knew about Lexington and Concord too. I mean, Joseph Warren was the one who sent Paul Revere because he knew. He had such good intelligence going on. He was so plugged into the community, and he warned everybody, and he knew, and he was like, hey, we got to organize. It was his idea, in fact, to light the lanterns, one if by land, two if by sea. Of course, it was two by sea that night, but again, his intelligence would come in handy here because we knew. Now, originally the British were going to come on the 18th of June, and so sneaky, they were like, oh, we're going to change it to the 17th. So we came on the night of the 16th. So most of the beautiful buildings and row homes that you see today are obviously post June 1775 because Charleston was so severely burned by the British. I mean, the fires were a huge part of it, and You know, thankfully, during the siege of Boston, a lot of families, patriot families, had already left and gone to the countryside. John Adams, in fact, even moved his family out of downtown, further down to Quincy, outside of the city, so that they wouldn't get caught up in all of this. Okay, so the night of June 16th. So Andrew McClary comes and he's with New Hampshire, and there are more men from New Hampshire here than any other colony. And the earthworks have all been done, everything's set up. They worked all through the night, ready to go. The morning comes and action ramps up pretty quickly. So even though this is considered, from a tactical standpoint, a British victory, they actually lost hundreds of more men than we did, although we lost hundreds as well. Body count wise, there's just no nice way to put that, is there? They did lose more, but strategically they did gain the high ground and maintained it, and the siege of Boston waged on. The good news is that 2 days prior, our wonderful His Excellency General Washington was installed as General Commander of the Continental Army, so help is on the way. So Andrew McClary is successful on June 17th. Him and his troops from New Hampshire go back to Medford, Massachusetts, down the road, and he is gathering more intelligence. He's really concerned about the troops left behind here, the wounded and the dying, not yet dead. And sadly, that's the reality of this war. It was very, very bloody. Like, it was a horrible scene, and he was just overcome. Being the giving person that he was, having the scout experience again, he was always thinking ahead, thinking tactical, thinking what he could do to help. And he goes back to Medford and he starts getting more and more info that there's a good number of men here on the field, and he's really concerned about this. This bothers him to the point where he does the crazy thing, he does the honorable thing, he does the patriotic thing. He comes back, and anything he can have to help the wounded and dying, he puts himself in this situation that he was warned not to come. They were like, dude, don't go back there. You survived, you live to see another night, it's another day, let's carry on. But he's heartbroken. He's heard about all the losses and he wants to do something to continue to help, and he is tortured by the fact that there's still men here left behind. So he comes back, and he gets here, and short thereafter, a cannonball from down here strikes him in the chest. His body goes flying and he's instantly dead.
Captain Dearborn of Epping said, "I had him carried to Medford, where he was interned with all respect and honor we could afford to the manes of a great and good man. He was my friend, and I loved him as a brother." During the dedication of the Bunker Hill Monument, Daniel Webster said, "Thus fell Major McClary in battle, the handsomest man in the army and favorite of his New Hampshire troops. There is no stone or memorial adequate, but this we build in his honor. The sun went down at noon on the day that ushered in our nation's birth." Due to Dr. Warren not accepting his generalship in time and wanting to serve that day as a regular officer, our Andrew McClary was technically, as a major, the highest ranking officer to die at the battle.
Now, very interesting, so many people, and I'm trying to write this wrong here, so many people don't know who Andrew McClary is, but this is the famous painting by John Singleton Copley of the death of Dr. Warren. And here you can see, right here with the musket, that is Andrew McClary of Epsom. So unfortunately, after the battle, Major McClary's body was taken by horse and buggy to Medford, Massachusetts, about 20 miles west of here. It wasn't just him, it was him and the bodies of other soldiers from the New Hampshire line. They were buried in a mass grave with other victims from this Bunker Hill battle, and placed in a grave with no marker, no headstone, nothing showing us that a great man was buried there. But we know, don't we? So that's the ticket. We know, and we can tell the story, and we can keep the message alive. It's a message of freedom, overcoming, doing what's right, even when it seems like the crazy thing to do. So, like Patrick Henry, I know no way of judging the future but by the past. It's been fun showing you this. I hope you guys learned something. I hope you feel enriched, and if nothing else, you know a story that a lot of people don't know. So, I mean, even the Rangers in the Bunker Hill Monument had no idea what I was talking about, and they were fascinated. So, hey, now you guys are on the cutting edge. But all right, it's been fun. Share, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. Take care. So is that your ice cream truck?
It depends. If you have the FBI, it's not my truck.
No.
Where are you guys from?
Oh, New Hampshire.
You used to come to this truck?
Who?
Paul Revere. That's how long I've been doing this.
Oh.
He used to come with his horse.
I would be really impressed if that were true.
He got ice cream and his horse got an ice cream. And the last time they came, he said, hurry up, people are chasing me. And then he was supposed to come back and give me the money. He never showed up.
That sounds
True
like a
story.
tall tale.
No, it's a true story. All right, see ya.
Take care. We're at Fort McClary in Kittery, Maine. But what is Fort McClary? Who's it named after? Old North Church bonus footage. Unexpected, but there it is. One if I land, two if I see.